Shay. Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
Congratulations on the Series B and reaching $100 million in TCV.
Thank you
it's a
very
huge
much.
milestone.
It is. Thank you.
How are you feeling?
Pretty good. I think it shows, the scale of Unframe, how fast we gather momentum, how customers like to work with us and how we expand with those customers, and what good job we're doing.
What do you think this milestone really means for Unframe?
I think it means we're getting the trust of, enterprises that we work with, that we're scaling very rapidly, that we're actually making the impact we were intended to make on AI use cases that are real, that are valuable, that are, core to those businesses, that are willing to take significant long-term commitments on us, multi-year, large deals, how well we get embedded in those organizations. I think that is the really exciting part.
Obviously, you're a young company, so you've been around for 2 years. And so this milestone is also a testament of, the platform that you've built in such a short time frame. What do you think is kind of the anchor demand that you're meeting with customers? Like, why do they choose Unframe, especially as you're still a startup, you're not a full-blown kind of enterprise, right?
I think they're really, our core thesis said that they're going to struggle with their AI use cases and to bring them to life. And we thought, okay, what would be the best way to solve it? And then we built this platform, you know all about it, but the idea of the Lego blocks that enable us to assemble a solution pretty quickly. And then also allowing the organization itself to leverage the underlying platform for additional use cases that they want to build in-house, to extract the data, to have this concept of a knowledge fabric. I just heard the term context lake. You can even think of it like that. And so I think they basically get three benefits. One is that their use case comes to life, and only then they need to make the choice if to license it or not. Two is that they can pick really any operational challenge that they have, even the significant, impactful one. And three is that it's not a point solution. It's not like you solve this one use case and it's aside from everything else in your AI program, but it's very much embedded in your AI program and it's part of it. And so that enables you to almost do like a managed AI transformation. And I think in today's market, you have to do AI to stay relevant. I think Unframe is a really good path in achieving that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we'll get back to the platform, but I did want to mention that you just raised the Series B. So, thinking about, obviously it's a milestone, the Series B, but what do you think it allows Unframe to do next?
So, we're definitely accelerating on everything in our go-to-market functions, R&D functions, executive team, doing some key executive hires. You'll hear more about that. And so I think these three angles are basically what this raise is concentrated on. It's just about scale now. Unframe is a super efficient company, so it's not like we burn a lot of capital. We're rather capital efficient. But it's still good to raise more to be able to spread our message and our offering to more audiences, more markets, more on every angle.
So obviously this is a huge milestone on the traction front and also obviously on the fundraising front. What is the most what are you most proud of in this moment in time? And it's hard to stop and kind of smell the roses, especially in your kind of line of business. But really, what are you most proud of right now?
I think that it's no longer a dream in my head. I think, if you take 2.5 years ago, it was in no one's mind. And now it's basically a living thing. Unframe is a living thing. There's a lot of employees. They basically are what Unframe is. And so I don't have to hold it all on my shoulders. It's like Unframe is its people, and they all speak the Unframe language. They all gathered for the Unframe mission and what it is we do for customers. And I think that's the most exciting part, is that, it's not just Shay and weird idea.
So actually remember Shay and your really weird idea 2.5 years ago, because we were talking about it before you started Unframe. So I kind of want to take you back to that moment. You were a successful cybersecurity entrepreneur. What made you go for AI? It was such a contrarian move back then, and it wasn't what it is right now in the market. So what was your lighthouse thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think I recognized three things. One is that I saw AI coming out, and I knew that exactly this gap will exist. Enterprises will want to adopt it, but they'll struggle. So someone should build a company to solve that gap, how that company needs to look like. And I had the idea of Unframe in my mind, and I wanted to invest in a company that does that, because I was like, all right, I did my thing, but I didn't find a team or someone focused on that mission. So I thought, okay, then I will probably need to do it. And so it was more oriented from the problem. The other aspects is cyber in a sense is more reactive type of play. Like you buy it to secure a certain thing that is already happening. With AI, you're the initiator. Like you're transitioning something. You're an operating system, if you will. Like you're where the knowledge worker goes to do their work, and it's different than just securing that work. So I felt like I want to make the switch to the less reactive and more like actual like work tools and actual the way we do things. So that made the move.
What do you think you took from your experience as a cybersecurity entrepreneur? Because it's interesting. It is a move. It is a transition. But I'm sure you had things that you kind of took with you from that first journey, right?
Yeah. So I basically I knew enterprises by that point. So I knew how they would think about AI. I kind of guessed what they would look to move on, how they would interpret that. So all my experiences with enterprises, probably what I took with me. I think that's the key element. Yeah.
I have a question on that because you were the CTO at No Name, and you were a very interesting CTO because you were also super customer facing, right? And at what moment did you realize that you're actually kind of CEO material? And I have to say, in our first interaction, I was like, this guy can be the CEO, like with all of your qualities. So, I mean, what was the moment in your head where you're like, I want to run my own ship?
I think I did it because I didn't have a choice. It's not like I'm in love with that role or that title. I was like, all right, this is the company that I'm building or that we're building. Who's the right person to lead it? And I just thought, well, I guess it should be me. Yeah, I guess it should be me. It's not necessarily a very fun role, right? Let's remember the CEO gets to deal with all the most difficult problems, the most terrible moments is what the CEO gets to deal with all day. But someone has to do it and someone has to do it well. And I felt like I'm probably the right person. So I just went ahead and did it.
Do you think that you have an advantage as a CEO that was a CTO? Like, how do you think that connection is?
I think so. I see it sometimes because to this day, sometimes I'm switching hats. Like I'm always switching hats to whatever is the burning problem. So I can spend the day, working on architecture and tech and stuff like that. I can be in front of customers. I know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm reaching as deep as they want on the tech. I kind of, that's my bread and butter. Same for cyber. Like if they want to talk cyber, I know that. I did that before. So I have a very deep knowledge of what they're talking about beyond just being like the financials and the metrics and the impact and stuff like that. And so I think it does give you a certain advantage for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So we've seen huge announcements on AI implementation. And I think the question now is actually, what does that mean, right, for AI adoption? So what's your take?
So it's a very interesting play, right? Because it's exactly that gap that I highlighted, that enterprises will struggle, they'll need something to close that gap, etc. And then the foundational companies kind of pushed for a very long time for like everyone will build in-house, they'll have the smart coding tools. And so for them to make that play is actually a very interesting announcement to the market of saying, okay, we do understand that enterprises struggle. We do understand it's not all going to be self-build. So what are we going to offer them? And then they started a services company. But I feel that services company is somewhat of a patch. So they recognize the gap, and their way for proposing on how to solve that gap is by giving you people, like coders on hire. That's not a very good way, because you're basically replacing some sort of human dependence with a different human dependence. Now you're dependent on people who are not your employees to come in, build this stuff for you, go away, and every time you want to change something, you have to bring them back in. And so I didn't like that part. I like the part where they say, okay, there is a gap, we need to solve it, how would we solve it? I didn't like the play where they said, okay, we'll solve it by basically giving you coders on hire. Like that's what those consultancies or services play are. What Unframe is trying to do is say you don't need those people. They have a bunch of titles now, the AI strategist, the FDE, whatever it is. You don't need these people. How about be focused on the outcome, rely on a platform that guarantees you that outcome, and pay for it just like you pay for your Netflix subscription. And I think that's the right path. That's probably where the world is going to end. The question is, will Unframe be the winner that is able to do that to do that long term before like other companies, hyperscalers and stuff like that are trying to offer the same thing. I think it's a really difficult thing to offer, so I'm not too worried for now. And I think Unframe's approach is probably the right approach where I believe the world will go. So I'm not too worried about that. I actually found it pretty good for us because it kind of highlights the problem. It's like, okay, you're not going to build it in-house because you saw the services companies that are now trying to give you the solution. Why don't you take our approach?
I have a question on that. So obviously, you're very kind of vocal on the fact that you don't need more FDEs. You're replacing humans with humans. And one thing that I think is interesting is organizations are not treating AI as a normal software, right? So there is kind of like an education process that they need to go through that Unframe is kind of pioneering with the fact that you need to treat it as customized enterprise software and will be that platform for you. So how do you go through that journey with customers to get them to trust Unframe that will be your kind of solution provider? We're not this kind of ambiguous AI platform that is super hard and complex for you to manage, and that's why you need humans. So how do you go through that process with them?
Right. So I think they do understand AI requires tailoring. This is why you see all these companies popping up, because enterprises understood that for valuable AI, it needs to be tailored. Then the second thing they understood is that they want managed solutions. Like the long tail of AI is really painful because AI is changing so quickly. So if I give you a solution at that point in time and I don't change anything in it, in 6 months, it's probably obsolete, right? And so if you build in-house or you get a services company, so you do want a managed solution. And then the last thing that those enterprises want, and we kind of attach to that, is that it won't be a point solution. Like even though I'm getting a solution that is doing something specific, etc., I wanted to play nicely with the rest of my AI program. So whether I use Cowork, Copilot, whatever it is, I want that solution that I built to be part of that. I want to be able to expand on it further, have this solution communicate with this one and that one. This compounding effect is very important for them. So we're actually tapping onto kind of things they already know. We barely need to educate anymore. I think 2 years ago, it was a different world and different story. I remember people told me that the existing SaaS companies are going to conquer that market. Public market says exactly the opposite, right? The SaaS companies are kind of doing not so well. And so I don't feel we need to convince that much anymore. It's just about, they need to have a lot of trust in Unframe. That's important because we're dealing with really important problems and helping them solve that. And I think what we're doing and the customers we're able to have, and the referrals we're getting and the expansion with the existing customers and this amazing milestone that we just did, I think that gets us the trust that we need for enterprises to choose to work with us.
So what do you think, a big enterprise comes to Unframe and kind of starts the process? What would a great conversation look like? Like what do they need to come to the table with a specific need? Like how does it look like?
So they don't necessarily have to have the specific need top of mind. They're first going to come in, they're going to talk through their AI strategy. They're probably going to talk about what they build versus what they buy. They're going to talk about these. Then we're going to present Unframe, and then they'll want to deep dive. We would want to deep dive into one use case that is top of mind for them. Doesn't have to be the biggest impact, but we do like the impactful ones. We don't want to do just the nice to haves. We prefer to do something more meaty, if you will. Usually they have those. Sometimes they don't, and then it's a slower conversation. Usually then, the conversation might end, and then a month later we get this email and it's like, hey, we have this, can Unframe do it? So that happens. If they have a problem that's top of mind, Unframe just goes at it. So we're starting the solutioning process. We're talking about our platform, our benefits, etc. We come back about a week later with a solution that is ready for them. They just log in and they can see it. And that's usually the wow moment. It's like, how did you guys do it? It's like, well, this is what we said we would do. We didn't think you guys will be back. So that's the cool part.
At what stage does kind of the expansion happens? Because the expansions happen super fast in Unframe, right? So when is it when they start using the product and they're like, oh, they have this aha moment? Like when is
even when they have the aha moment, when we come back with a solution and they say, okay, this is really cool. Let's license it. Let's roll it out to users. Then there's the internal rollout to production and enterprise that can be slower. but then they want to move on to the rest of the use cases or to the other problems they have on their desk to solve these as well. And so something that we see very often is that the executive or whoever it is that works with Unframe gets more and more responsibility from their org because they are able to deal with it. So they get another problem and they solve that with Unframe. Get another problem and they solve that with Unframe. And then their teams are expanding. They get promoted. Like, it's a very common theme in Unframe that we started working with someone and they get promoted through our, just through our engagement. And suddenly we're dealing with their team and their team is suddenly 25 people. They were an IC before. And so that's the cool thing about Unframe, is that it's not just good for us, also the people that we work with turn into champions of their own org, because those are the ones that are able to solve use cases. They just give it to this guy, he'll know what to do with it. And so it's pretty cool.
That's very cool. So the $100 million TCV moment feels super important because it does reflect this customer pull that you're seeing. So it's not just kind of internal momentum, it's actually from the market. So what do you think it proves about customer demand around AI? Like, did something change, you feel like, in the last year, let's say?
I think the demand is increasing for AI. I don't think we're at the peak of enterprise demand for AI. Not yet. I think there are some, I think there's pressure, let's adopt AI, but it's not very targeted. I feel, the more AI native classic companies will show up. So imagine there will be now an AI native bank and an AI native hospital, and then everything else that isn't AI native yet will have a lot more pressure to really close the gap quickly. So imagine an AI native hospital pops up, every other hospital now looks very old. And so then you will feel the real, hair on fire moment where it's like, okay, we have to go at it. Now I feel it's somewhat exploratory. There are some high, important use cases. These are the ones obviously that we like the most. So there is motion in the market. It's obviously a giant market. So even small part of it feels like it's huge, but we're not at the peak yet. There's still some years, I think, until the peak. I would guess, 12 months, something like that, until it's really like, it's everywhere. Yeah.
And I mean, you've been in this market for kind of 2.5 years. You've seen the cycle kind of starting to build up. What do you think in terms of, like, if I'm a CEO of an enterprise, what do you think I should do if I want my organization to adopt AI? Like, where do I start even?
Yeah, so I think there's two categories of solutions you can think of. One is like operational and one is like management software. And I think the biggest impact you can do is with operational software, of how actually your business operates. Target those use cases. Don't just target more and more management software. Don't necessarily target efficiency plays.
What do you mean by management software?
It's a better reporting. It's not like the actual core of how the work is being done. What is your offer to the market, right? And I think it's a long known thing. I think, it relies on a lot of research done on that particular topic, that a lot of different enterprises are spending the same amount on software, but the really successful enterprises are spending it on operational software of how they do their business, like important to their business to function. And I think that's the most valuable use cases you can target. Usually it will mean that there's no point solution for it. You can build that in-house, but that can take you a certain amount of time, etc. Or hopefully you can rely on Unframe, talk to us, let's talk about the use case and let's bring it to life pretty quickly. And this is the one that is creating a business advantage for you versus your competitors. The fact that you have better, sales reporting might be important, but it's not as impactful as something that is actually like core business problem that you're not solving.
Yeah. And so, the world is kind of advancing and models are becoming, better and better every day. We're all experiencing it.
Yeah.
Where do you think the durable value lies today in the AI world? Like, where do you think it is?
I think now it's pretty obvious that it's the applicative layer. It used to be not so much, right? People thought it's in the model layer. Right. Now model feels like it's commodity, right? It feels somewhat that. Open weights models are getting a lot better and a lot stronger than they were before. I think it's just a matter of time until they close the gap and then you can run an open weights model. But in the applicative layer, where it meets the business, when the knowledge worker is actually using it, where the management is actually using it, where it runs the business, that's probably the most important layer. I think that's part of why Anthropic is rising so quickly, is because they went after that layer somewhat. So yeah.
obviously I've invested a lot in cybersecurity, and you're a former cybersecurity entrepreneur. And I think that we always think about trust and governance when we're talking about enterprise, right? When we're in the cybersecurity lens, how much do you think it's a big part of the conversation when adopting an AI, and how much do you see it when you're talking to customers?
So it's really big, obviously. It's really big, and it is important, but it feels like the safe choice in a weird way. It feels like if an enterprise will speak enough about governance, no one would feel that they're not doing anything about AI. But they're missing the really key risk. Like, you can talk about governance all day, but if you won't move on AI, you will not have a business to govern. Like, it will mean nothing. And so for enterprises, it's very easy to say, let's wait, let's do things securely, let's do things safely, etc. The reality is, in today's market, you just can't. If you wait too long and you won't move on AI in time, you will be like meaningless. And so it's super important, but it needs to happen fast alongside like actually getting use cases. You cannot have the privilege of saying, let's figure out security first, let's figure out the data first. You don't have the luxury of just waiting and figuring it out. You either move or you're going to be left behind. And at some point, it's just going to be too much and you won't be able to catch up.
And so how is your cybersecurity background is helping you kind of take customers through that journey from, wait a minute, I'm not ready, I need to have my cybersecurity kind of program ready to adopt AI, to, okay, I'm ready to move and adopt it?
So I think the idea, again, is deciding on the business use case or the business outcome that you're targeting, and then infusing security into that, like what it is you're trying to do, and then making sure you do it securely. And so obviously in Unframe, security is first and foremost, coming from cybersecurity background, compliance was super important, the security controls we have, the governance that the organization will have, the control, the authorization, everything that goes into it is part of our platform. And that's part of the reason we are able to get enterprise-grade solutions out of the door so quickly, because they already have all these capabilities that we know are a must. And so I think when we discuss with customers and we land on a use case and they see that we come with the know-how and the thoughtfulness of how it should be done, I think that alleviates a lot of their concerns to say, okay, let's do this with Unframe, and we don't have to do all this figuring out ourselves. Like, there's a company that's already basically doing exactly that, figuring the whole thing out through and through, focused on a business use case, focused on a business outcome. Let's just do that.
I have a contrarian question for you. As a former cybersecurity entrepreneur, do you think AI companies should think as security companies, or do you think it will be a disaster if they start thinking like
if that? AI companies will think as security companies? I don't think it's the right move, because AI, by definition, like, they have to be not focused on the risk. They have to be focused on the adventure. Like, AI companies are doing the path ahead, thinking about the path ahead, and security needs to somewhat go alongside it and secure it, etc. But you cannot be like, they can't do it. Like, if one would do it, then the other will outbeat it to the target. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. Like, there's this now adventurous road that we all have to take, and the fastest one will probably be the most important one. And so security has to somewhat catch on. I think it's not bad for the security market, because there's a lot of demand that has to happen right now. It can't wait. And so,
how much do you think the CISOs should be part of the conversation with AI implementation?
They are. I know that they are, but I think they're there as enablers. So it all starts, I've been in some conversation, it all starts, there's the business strategy. That's the most important part of a company, right? That's what the North Star is. And then everything after that is an enabler for the business strategy. It would be very weird for a company to have a business strategy and then be blocked by their security strategy. That will not do a good business. So you have a business strategy, now make sure your security strategy is aligned to it, and the CISO is part of that process and is enabler to that process. That's how I think of a good functioning org.
Yeah, that makes sense. In your grand optimistic vision, what does Unframe become?
Grand optimistic vision, then Unframe becomes a core pillar to applicative AI, which makes it one of the largest software companies in the world. That's what it will be.
Love that.
I think, there won't be that many. And if Unframe turns to be one of those, then one of the biggest businesses I think we've seen.
Love that. What should people remember from this milestone, from the reaching $100 million TCV?
That is a small, important celebration on our grand journey, right? It's difficult to do grand journeys, and so these important milestones, happy milestones, are good to celebrate. I hope that it shows the trust, and it shows the momentum, and it shows everything that works for Unframe.
I want to conclude this interview with asking you, what do you think enterprise software will look like in 5 years?
Wow. That's a big question. I think software will be tailored. I don't think generic software is going to be a thing for very long. I do think that buy will succeed much more than build. That's a contrarian take, by the way. I just think companies that will do well will be focused on their core business proposition, and everything else they'll look outside to buy and to just get done, to clear it out of the way. And I think that's the good place to be as Unframe. Hopefully that turns out to be true. Yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Amen.